I don't think I'm expecting any naked people to come in. That's normally what happens, isn't it? When you've got a...
I don't know. Again, not in this house.
No. Yeah.
In your house.
Are they people you know? Are they people you don't? Hello and welcome to the Lib Dem Podcast. My name is John Potter and I'm joined today by three exceptional LibDems. And these are all LibDems who are running councils in Britain, because we've heard lots of interest and anecdotes from people like myself who lead opposition groups and people like Richard Kemp. But these are three leaders of Lib Dem councils, and some people say that actually leaders of councils are more important than MPs. So we'll find out if that's true or not. I suppose first up we have Joe. Joe, you are the leader of the Cotswolds Council and the leader of the Lib Dems there. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Councillor Joe Harris. I have been a councillor since the tender age of 18. So I guess in some circles, I get described as a bit of a veteran of local government, which is quite scary, actually. But yeah, I've been the leader now since May 2019, when we had that fantastic night when, 700, 800 Lib Dem councillors were elected. And yeah, we swept to a majority here in the Cotswolds, which for many years was a really, really Tory area. Well, not anymore. There's a big old splodge of yellow on the map and it looks great. And we're doing great things.
And next up, who has the biggest of our groups, is Dina Romero. Now, you have a group of 37, Dina, on Bath and North East Somerset.
Hi, yes, my name's Dina Romero and I'm the leader of Bath and North East Somerset Council. I've been a councillor since 2003 and I've been the group leader of our Lib Dem group since 2015. So I've been the leader of our group for 7 years, and 2 of which, of course, have been as the leader of the council. And as you say, yes, we've had quite an interesting time, because we went from being a relatively small group, but still the largest group in opposition in 2015. So I think we had 15 then, to more than doubling our numbers to the slightly scary numbers 37.
And last but by absolutely no means least is Stephen Robinson, who is the leader of Chelmsford City Council. Now, Stephen probably had the biggest success in 2019. I don't know if it was the biggest success in the country, but he went from 5 to 31. Is that correct, Stephen?
That's right. Yeah. Thanks, John. Yeah. Hi. Yeah. Stephen Robinson, the leader of Chelmsford City Council, England's newest city. And I was previously in a previous life, in the 90s, I was joint leader of a coalition on Epping Forest District Council, and also joint deputy leader of our coalition on Essex County Council. Then I ran for Parliament, almost won Chelmsford in the 2010 election, and then have been on Chelmsford Council since 2011. And as you said, went from 5 to 31 in 2019. And one of the things I'm most proud about, and I'm sure we'll get on to talk about that, is the diverse group that we have. A number of them, I'm very pleased to say, many of them are younger than me. There are more women than men. And we've got our 4th baby on the way in the group.
Excellent. Oh, that's brilliant news. Well, many congratulations to your group. It seems to be growing by the month.
We call the babies the non-voting members.
But I mean, 2019 was absolutely fantastic. As Joe said, we were nearly 800 gains across the country for the Lib Dems. Lots of places really picking themselves up after coalition. So what was this, from your point of view, what was the secret of that success? Was it just the alignment of the stars, or what was the driving influence to your success? Should we go with you first, Stephen?
Okay, organisation. That is the one thing that I would say in local elections, which are low turnout elections. Organisation matters more than anything else, because it's all about finding who are your key people and getting them out to vote. In a general election, not many people need reminding there's an election on. And so it's a whole different kettle of fish. And in a local election, as we know, there's a lot more people who are predisposed to support us. They don't actually necessarily support us, but they're more disposed to support us than in a general election. And so it's about identifying them and getting them out. And that requires, good organisation, and building a team that has the people, the finances and the data that are able to deliver success.
And I suppose, Dina, from your point of view, because Bath had an MP for a very long time, and then obviously had a very rough time at the end of coalition, and then seemed to bounce back. So what was part of that bounce back? Was it just you guys rolling up your sleeves and saying, right, we are not going to let the Tories just run this area to the ground?
Well, absolutely, yes. So like Stephen, a lot of this was on campaigning, local issues as well as national issues. I felt that we also were a strong opposition, even though there was only 15 of us. And actually at that time, I think there was 37 Conservatives as well, who, so that the tables have turned since 2019. I think we stood up to the administration, to the Conservatives then, and we were seen by residents to be on their side. And I think that's a really important piece as well, is to remember who you are working for and to work with them. And I think that's how you build your success. We also made sure we had people in place early on, as well, as early as could be, because between 2015 and 2019, we also had ward boundaries being redrawn as well. So we weren't entirely certain how many of us would be needed or how many areas would change significantly. But we did have people in place who were absolutely willing to put the work in, and that paid off by them, pretty much all of them, winning their seats in 2019.
And Joe, you can complete this kind of set where, all three of you guys took control from the Tories. That's it. But I imagine a lot of the lessons that led you to victory would work equally as well in Labour-facing seats.
Yeah, I think the secret to success is a combination of all, what Stephen has said, what Dina has said. Organisation, absolutely, a very clear offering to residents about what you stand for, and those values that we hold dear as Liberal Democrats. But I think also just having a really core team. Quite often local parties are made up of 4 or 5, maybe 6 people that really drive proceedings, and I think if you can get that core team in place, then you're going to be going far. I know as a party we love committees, we love having debates, and I think there's absolutely a place for that. But certainly when it came to our campaign in the local elections, we had a very small core team who made the bulk of campaigning decisions, and really groups like the exec gave us the money to fund those, and they trusted us to get on and do it. So making sure that your team has clear leadership. And actually, I think the other big thing I'd mention is in previous elections, we'd always stood on the Lib Dem's favourite 6 to fix. What we found is that actually most of our candidates on the doorstep couldn't remember 6 things. So we'd be going, oh, what was the 4th? What was the 5th on the doorstep? So actually, we narrowed it down to a very key message. It was, the Cotswolds deserves better was our message and our campaign slogan. And then we had 3 key issues that we really wanted to drive home. One was the affordability crisis around housing. One was around climate change and the climate emergency. And then the third one was around, really creating a sustainable local economy that will allow businesses to thrive and also create that sustainable jobs that we need. So yeah, I think it's a combination of everything that we've all said. And I think that applies to Labour areas and indeed Conservative areas. So yeah.
And did you all know that you were going to win in the run up to the election? The Preston Lib Dems actually had a pretty good feeling beforehand that something was happening. Maybe about 2 weeks out, we thought there's a lot of direct Tory switches here. When you guys know when you go on a canvass session, you get a direct switch from your main opponent, you think, okay. So, and we started getting dozens of them. So did you guys know far out that you were going to have that sort of success, or was it like kind of what's going on?
If I can jump in first, I think there's this. I think quite often you can look at the data and think, oh, that's too good to be true. We're Lib Dems, we're pessimists by nature and optimists in equal measure. But the data was looking really good for us. Our canvas returns were really good, and we were sort of going, oh my word, is it really this good?
Mm.
So, a hint of caution, but I think, looking at the data, I knew a week or two out that it was going to be very close and we'd probably get over the line if we could. And I think as it happened, the national picture went our way, so much that actually in a lot of places we probably got a lot more than we would have in a normal local election. So we had that fair wind, I think, that in a lot of places probably got us over the line. And probably here in the Cotswolds, we were expecting probably hung council, 1 or 2 seats in it. And as it was, I think that national situation got us over the line. I'm sure it's the case for Stephen and Dina.
Hello, John from the Lib Dem Podcast here. We are delighted to say that this episode is sponsored by Prater Rains. Now more than ever, you need a professional-looking online presence and website. Prater Rains have been helping Liberal Democrat campaigns succeed for 18 years. Their LibDem Foci package combines a website, social media and email system to help LibDems win. You'll receive great support from real people, fair pricing and a huge range of features to choose from. Prater Rains are already the bespoke developers for Lighthouse, LibDem Draw Online and the LD Directory. They combine a talented system design with an unrivaled understanding of our party, our data and our systems. To find out more, check out the Prater Rains website at praterrains.co.uk/liberal-democrats. This podcast has been sponsored by the Katora Coffee Club, the UK's most environmentally friendly coffee club. There are over 400 independent roasters in the UK, each one crafting coffee in their own unique style. Katora Coffee Club works with some of the best to take you on a voyage of coffee discovery. The Katora Coffee Club delivers ethically sourced and independently roast coffee directly to your door. Each month you'll receive between 2 and 4 bags of coffee and their monthly extract magazine. Even better for LibDem podcast listeners, use the code BETTERCOFFEE to save 5% on subscriptions and gift boxes for a limited time only. All Katora Coffee Club boxes are carbon negative and offset the CO2. So why not do some good, enjoy some great coffee and check out the website www.katoracoffeeclub.com. Now, back to the podcast.
We had a potential problem, and it's a good problem to have, so to speak, is that there were no Labour councillors. Nobody else. It was just 5. It had been just 5 of us and 52 Tories, because we got rid of Labour completely in 2007. They had 1 seat in 2011 and lost it to the Tories in the general election day, and so it was basically we either we're in control or the Tories are in control. There was not going to be a hung council, and so we had to go for the full control. And when I announced that at Kickstart in November 2017, everybody in the room went, "Really? No, I don't think so."
Stephen, I was there. I remember thinking you were bonkers because you were going.
Yes. Well, there we go. And then we got our act together, and obviously a lot of people, like everybody, we had loads of new members in 2015, 2016, and a bit more in 2017. And the key thing was getting those involved. The silver lining to having lost a lot of seats in 2011 and then in 2015 was that we had to find a load of new people, and I think all of us should be thinking about succession planning, and some councillors don't. Of the 5 of us, we knew one was going to retire, and she'd been a councillor for 32 years and was the first free woman of the city that we declared. So we needed lots of new people, and our parliamentary candidate, who I had encouraged to stand in the 2017 general election, she was then my campaign manager for the general election, and basically she and I drove the campaign forwards and brought other people on board. And between us, in particular, she and I took responsibility for basically talking to people who would be good candidates. I'll be honest, we specifically identified female members amongst because I wanted to improve the diversity of our council group. There's very rarely a shortage of older white men willing to put themselves forward. of the 31, 19 had not been involved in politics before. So that was really key. Getting new people involved was really key to our success. And it's hard work, but it's the only work that really makes a difference. You have to spend the time. So one of our new councillors, she said, well, yeah, I'm a bit, I've got a full-time job and 2 small children. I don't think I can do it this time, maybe in 4 years' time. And I said, no, we want to make it possible for people like you who've got a full-time job to be because obviously a district here, because it wasn't mentioned, but obviously Dina is a unitary council, which is more of a full-time job. At district level, Joe and I, it should be possible to be at least a backbencher and have a full-time job. More difficult if you're in control, of course, and that's a challenge that we've had to wrestle with. So Eleanor, eventually between Marie, my deputy leader, our parliamentary candidate, and myself, managed to twist her arm, and she's one of the ones. She's now had another baby. So it's basically recognizing good people and persuading them that they can do it. And sometimes not taking no for the first answer and letting them think about it and going back to them and persuading them another time, because some of the very best people will say no the first time. And because they're good people, they've got other demands, other people want them to do other things. So yeah, that was really important. And having spent that time, invested that time, it meant we had a fantastic team that were going to go and knock on doors, which would collect the data, enabling us to make those important decisions about where we were winning or not, and working together as a team. Because Chelmsford has been has a strong Liberal history, sort of since 1974. We used to have strong branch structure, and they used to take all the decisions. And that clearly was, if you were trying to elect an MP or take control of the council, you need a single team, as Joe was saying, of 4 or 5, 6 core team people that are trusted to take all the decisions and can drive forward on the organisation and the message.
Dina, what was it like for you? Was it being obviously a unitary council tend to have far bigger districts or wards, and so did you get the feeling that something great was happening?
Well, it was interesting. So if you looked at the data, probably a few months out, you would have thought, maybe there's some wards here that we might want to, drop down, from the, absolute going to win category to, sort of maybe. But I think, well, certainly I recall having a sense that we were going to, we were likely to win. As Joe said, you always have to temper your, that kind of either over optimism with, huge amounts of pessimism, or depending on who you've literally just spoken to, all that pessimism with, a healthy dose of optimism, which I think sometimes makes my return certainly a little bit confusing to read. But I would say that, we've certainly felt that we were likely to win, but we didn't know the full scale of that win. So we won in places that, since Bath and North East Somerset Council has existed, have never had any other councillor other than a Conservative. So so absolutely delighted that we were able to win some of those places, particularly in North East Somerset, which is traditionally quite a Conservative stronghold. And like Stephen was saying, it was making sure you had really good people who had put themselves forward to be councillors. So we had an interview process as well, so that each person who put themselves forward could be considered in a slightly more objective way to see whether or not they should be putting themselves forward now for the place that they wanted to put themselves forward, and obviously making a few changes to ensure that we had the best possible people in the right places to present to the public as their potential councillors. I must admit, there were a couple of people that I persuaded with that classic line, well, just put your name on the ballot paper. You never get elected. And there were some quite shocked faces on that night, on the early hours in 2019.
So now you guys obviously then got into victory. You're in control of the council. How much in your first few months did you know what you wanted to achieve, or was it really like on your first day you thought, right, now, because you talk, not all local parties do election manifestos, some do, some don't. The fact that no one ever reads them is beside the point. But how much did you know what you wanted to do as you took control?
So we built our manifesto with our members, which I think might have been the first time we'd actually done that. I mean, you often hear stories, and I'm sure some of us have done this previously, where you pretty much write the manifesto the day before you go to print. But we actually built this manifesto with our members, with residents, and it was based on what people told us they wanted changed or delivered, that we campaigned on. So it's based on a real well thought through and well researched piece of work. So we then had something that we could give to council officers, on the day of taking control. And so they were able then to build that into what has now become the corporate priorities for the council. So then they've got something that is really aligned to what we said we would deliver, and and that's what we've been working on since then.
We did similar. We do the normal campaigning surveys, and so that obviously brought up some of the issues that people were concerned about. And I suspect Joe and all our other district council colleagues find that county highways issues are a fairly hot topic all the time. So just because it was a district tier election, it wasn't going to stop us talking about the nasty Tories who run Essex County Council, who are underinvesting in our infrastructure and failing to fill the potholes. So, we've all got the catalogue of pothole photos, with garden gnomes fishing in the water or ducks and that kind of thing. So that was an important point. And we when you are having an effect is when your opponents start, criticising you for your campaign. And the Tories put out a very densely typed leaflet. It was in white writing on a blue background. Was there a blue party? And it was 3 paragraphs of saying, this isn't us, this is not fair. We've been working really hard for Chelmsford district, and you may be concerned about library closures, potholes, infrastructure, but that's nothing to do with us. So just like repeating our message for us. Thank you very much. And I can't remember if it's the same leaflet or on another one. They also wrote, some people might be thinking about using this opportunity to give the Tories a bloody nose. Please don't take that opportunity.
Oh dear.
Did they vote for you as well?
Well, funny you should say that. Yes, when I got back home after the budget meeting a year ago, and I said, guess how many votes we got for the budget tonight, and she said, I don't know, well, you've hopefully all 31 of you. Yes, I said, all 21 of the Tories voted for our budget as well.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
That sounds like a weak opposition.
Well, indeed. And then the excuse for doing it was, well, you're just carrying on all the good things that we've been doing. And so we said, maybe not. We've just put £17 million for affordable housing into the capital programme. I don't think you were doing that. So, yes, what we turned our manifesto into the council's strategic objectives. I try not to use the word corporate plan. So it's our Chelmsford, our plan. The funny thing was, in March 2019, the chief executive took a corporate plan to cabinet, And I'd been waiting for it for some time. And I said, when is it coming? He said, oh. So it went to March Cabinet. And I said, you do know you can't do anything with this in 10 days' time when Purdah starts. So it's, it's a bit pointless. And you can't assume the Tories will have a majority after the election. Oh, well, no, but I'm sure you wouldn't want to change much of it. We're all kind of on the same side doing the best for Chelmsford. And I basically wanted to say no. Basically, all of the strategic, a lot of the detail, yeah, sure, the operational stuff will stay the same, but in terms of the strategic priorities, so after the election, I dug out the copy, and I could show you that there's a very substantial difference. Although it's the same art worker, it's the same graphic designer that's done it. It looks different, it looks visually different, and the content is also very different, and the content reflects our strategic priorities. And I was very clear. My deputy leader Marie is one of the strongest advocates of the importance of branding, because you're promoting the Liberal Democrats. When you're trying to take control, you have to promote the Liberal Democrats, not just Councillor X or Councillor Y as good, upstanding, hard-working councillors. You have to. So we were campaigning on a greener, safer, fairer Chelmsford, and we took that into our manifesto. It's now our Chelmsford, our plan is we are delivering a greener, safer, fairer, and better connected. We've added better connected because we've got 4 directorates, and they've each got one thing to do. Yeah. And the cabinet are named after the corporate objectives. So I have a cabinet member for a greener and safer Chelmsford, cabinet member for a fairer Chelmsford, a cabinet member for sustainable development, and a cabinet member for connected Chelmsford.
Joe, what about you? What was it like when you came on board? Did you? Because obviously, I don't know how. You said you were 18 when you were first elected. I have no idea how old you are now. That might have been 20 years ago, Joe. I don't know how this worked. But so, what was it like being? Because I was 27 when I was first elected and considered young at the time. The average age for a councillor in Britain, I think, is 60. So, what was it like for yourself going into that?
Yeah, so I'm 27 now. So I was 26 when we took over. So yeah, still a young person, I like to think. But no, it was similar to Stephen and Dina. We had quite a comprehensive manifesto. That wasn't really. It was a public document, but that was really to hand to the officers, so they can build it into a corporate plan. So that was very detailed. And then, as I mentioned, we had our key messaging. I think Clegg tells an anecdote in his book where he got into Whitehall and they sort of put him in a cupboard, with a desk and a phone, and it was a bit like that, because certainly the officers did not expect there to be a change of administration. It's been a Conservative area for many years, and before that it was run by independents, and it's. One might describe it as tin pot, and I think that would probably be quite a generous description. The biggest challenge really has been the staffing. We had an LGA peer review quite soon after the elections, which basically branded the council inadequate to deliver the robust and comprehensive agenda that we want to try and implement, to try and change people's lives. It's very clear that the Conservatives had a very clear agenda: keep council tax as low as possible, cut it where possible. And we know when the government funding is going down, it doesn't really make tremendous financial sense to be freezing and cutting council tax. You've got to get income from somewhere because costs are rising all the time. So really our key objective has been to rebuild the council's finances. That will give us that springboard to be able to do all the nice things that we want to do. I think the other big thing as well, and I'm sure Stephen and Dina as well will sympathise with this, is that cultural change you need to try and build into the organisation. For a very long time, officers at our council have been told not to spend any money and do the bare minimum and do everything on the cheap. Well, I want to make sure we get great value for money for taxpayers, but I also think we should be providing, particularly those statutory services, a very high quality of statutory service, and doing things differently and thinking outside the box, and trying to be innovative. And so really, the takeaway lessons really were: you're never prepared for when you take over. You're always learning on the job, and I think to be honest, of course, being a young person in politics, I'm used to, I've been very patronised my whole life, including by Lib Dems, believe it or not. I think, we need to look at the way that we treat women in politics. We also need to look at the way we treat younger people, ethnic minority people, LGBT people. I think if you're not a middle-aged white man, then, quite often it is more difficult. So yeah, going into that leadership role, it was a case of, me putting my mark on it. I'm quite self-confident anyway. I've never had a problem with that. So it was a case of making sure I, use that attribute in a positive way to try and nail down my leadership and try and create that cultural change amongst the officers. And that's going to be a long-term project. We're not going to do that overnight.
And so, obviously, you guys set about your vision, started work, starting to change attitudes both within and outside the chamber, and then dealing with all the financial troubles that councils are having to deal with. There's very little spending wiggle room at all in any council, wherever they are in the country, and then COVID hits. So what has been your life during COVID in terms of dealing with responses, dealing with the government? I mean, I'm sure our listeners and viewers would love to know just exactly what it has been like, kind of trying to deal with this just once in a generation kind of situation.
Yeah, there's lots made in the press and on social media about how incompetent and awful the government are. And well, if you're a council leader, I mean, my God, that's magnified. It is quite extraordinary. And I think the other thing that really irks me is, as local councils, we're the ones who are closest to our communities. We have the links with people. We have the networks, and the total lack of recognition from government of the positive role that local councils can play is a disgrace, quite frankly. I mean, it really is. Everything's trying to be run from the centre. It's a command and control type affair. And to be honest, it's sort of straight out of the Dominic Cummings playbook, really. I know he's moved on, but that's what it feels like. It's command and control, and it's authoritarian. And, there's no recognition of localism, remember that word, at all. And I just think my big message to government is empower us, empower local councils. We're the ones who can deliver. We're closest to it. And quite often, we're the ones able to target the help most appropriately. So yeah, I think the main takeaway message from me is that seeing the way government works up close, and in particular this government, I mean, my God, it makes the press reports, look quite favourable. Actually, they're just incompetent beyond belief.
Yeah, that's right. I think, in the first couple of months, the day just went on from 9 a.m. till 11 and 12 at night. There were decisions needing to be taken about what services, whether we were going to stop running services, what we had to change. We have not actually stopped running anything that we were allowed to keep going. So we have not changed our refuse collection at all. So a lot of councils stopped collecting green waste, for example. We carried on doing everything that we possibly could whilst taking on the other things. One of the things that Joe and I have in common, which Dean, by using unitary isn't, is we play second fiddle to the county council, because the county council is the director of public health. But a good example of how central government doesn't have a clue is early on in the pandemic. The government said to the directors of public health, well, you can get your environmental health officers onto enforcing the rules in premises. And they were told, but the county councils don't employ EHOs, that's at the district level. Oh, okay. There was a big problem early on with getting the data passed down on the clinically extremely vulnerable who were told to shield. Initially, no one knew exactly. They were estimating, and then they found a few 100,000 more. And that's when the food parcel started. What they forgot was an awful lot of clinically extremely vulnerable people are not old. They are people in their 30s and 40s with cancer and other life-limiting conditions who have got used to looking after themselves, and they do have to hide away all the time. So they are digital natives. So Or what the government should have done from day one is said, here is your priority access to the supermarket. It took 6 weeks to get them priority access to the supermarkets. And instead, they were being delivered boxes of food, a lot of which was inappropriate because these clinically vulnerable people had various health conditions, which means they can't eat certain things. So an awful lot of the clinically vulnerable people were getting the food box and donating it to the food bank or the church or something. They just didn't know. And then the biggest failure, and this is where we as Liberal Democrats, and if Labour want to join in with this, well, that's fine. But we as Liberal Democrats must say, yes, we would have done it differently. In particular, on test and trace and isolate. And they should have given it to us to run from day one, instead of giving Dido Harding. I mean, the test and trace system can't even trace Dido Harding now. She's disappeared with her hundreds of millions of pounds. What they should have done was given it to us. And eventually, when they did, we have, I've just come off a call earlier this afternoon. We have every 2 weeks, we have the Essex Outbreak Engagement Board, which is not all, but most of the leaders and some of the chief execs, plus all the key health people. And we have Essex, which is the county and the districts working together, have a consistent track record of contacting 96% of the cases that are passed to us. And the government's centralised call centre had initially 60%, and it's gone up to about 67%. But which means they've been missing people. If we'd been allowed to run the tests locally at our local hospital or university laboratory, we'd have got the results the same day, instead of waiting 2 or 3 days, and then the national call centre kicks in. So it could be 5 or 6 days before someone is contacted and told to isolate, by which time they've infected half a dozen other or dozen more people. Yeah. So yes, the government has catastrophically failed this country over test and trace. That's why lockdown keeps having to come back, because lockdown is a stopgap whilst you fix the other things, and they've just completely failed to fix the other things. And you mentioned Dominic Cummings. I mean, he and Steve Bannon in America, they want to undermine politicians as a class of individual. And so they're quite happy to see chaos. And it's really very sad. We are, as a country, vaccinating an awful lot of people, but if we got the test and trace system going, we wouldn't have had 1,500 people die yesterday.
That's right.
I think the scale of the incompetence is just extraordinary, and it would be funny if if it hadn't just resulted in so many people dying or with changed lives as a result of catching this awful virus. And I would say the decisions that government have taken have never been enough early enough. So they could have decided to close the borders of the the country right at the beginning. As an island nation, I'm sure we would have been able to have rapidly reduced the numbers much faster than this sort of half-hearted lockdown, but with lots of exemptions, has resulted in. And it's just so upsetting, I think, to see how even in the West Country, where case numbers are and have been by and large quite low in comparison to the rest of the country, how they have increased so rapidly as a result of each time this government has lessened its control over the lockdown. So we saw our numbers going up after the summer. We saw numbers go up massively after Christmas, and and that was even with the knowledge that there was a new variant that had come in that was much more easily transmittable. And the government just waits till it has to take a decision, rather than taking those decisions at the right time.
John, can I just sort of add, if I have, there's a group of people, clearly 40%, in the polls are still going to vote Conservative. And quite often I hear residents who aren't Conservatives, but they say, oh, well, give Boris a break. He's doing the best he can. It's really hard. Well, no, I'm sorry, that's not good enough. I tell you who is doing the best they can. Our nurses, our doctors, our council staff, our frontline key workers. And I think it's insulting.
And carers.
Yeah, absolutely. You've nailed it on the head. I think our key workers and those giving care and support in this country, in our NHS, they are the heroes of this pandemic. They are the ones who have got a tough job. All we're asking the government to do is follow the scientific advice, have a plan and make some decisions based on a plan. But it's not. It's chaos. There's no plan. We flip, we flop, and we end up in this quite unsatisfactory situation. And you remember at the start of lockdown, 20,000 deaths was seen as the worst end of the prediction. 75,000 people dead in the UK because of this government's incompetence. I mean, if you're still gonna vote Conservative after that, then my word, we're in a state, aren't we? That's the challenge for our party. We need to really sell ourselves as the credible alternative to the Conservatives, basing our campaigns on science, on data, and we need to win the argument. That's the main thing. We have to win the argument.
I was just going to say the positive is, I think it's really shown a spotlight on the work that councils do, because we invariably have had to pick up the pieces to sort out, the mess, the lack of guidance, to try and sort of translate whatever the guidance is into real language so that people can understand, easily what it is they're now being asked to do. And so that, I guess, would be the positive from this. But at the end of the day, we need to be led by a far better government than is possible with the current incumbents of those roles.
That's right. I mean, I think Essex is one of the largest counties in the country. So there's 12 districts and 2 unitary authorities in Essex. And so when we have Essex leaders meetings, there's the 15 council leaders plus the police and crime commissioner, and we've got a good mix. So we now have 2 independent councils, 2 my majority group, and Colchester, which is Lib Dem led, working with Labour, 3 Labour-led councils, and the other are Tories. So it's a good mix. A couple of the Tories I would say are fairly competent, but most of the Tory leaders, they're just taking their lead from the county council leader, and it's been quite distressing to see that when there has been a very clear sort of failure of communication and the chains of communication between the 2 tiers, and that's been it was also become apparent in recent days as the vaccine rolls out, is that level of mistrust is even bigger within the NHS, that the national NHS doesn't trust the local NHS. And so we asked about sharing of data, and they're not even sharing it with a local level about who's been vaccinated, or at least not yet. We've been promised it will be. And certainly not going to share it with us. So that is, and also the content, Joe sort of touched on this, with which central government holds local councils. All council leaders and chief executives are invited to how should we call it, Dean? Is it a lecture? No, I'm not sure. A communication from the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government, and his band of merry men and women, both junior ministers and civil servants. And so there could be as many as 800 people on this call. He is always late. I think the latest he was 12 or 13 minutes, maybe 16 minutes. He's normally about 4 or 5 minutes late. And, you've got, as I say, over 800 people sitting there waiting. And of course, it's not very interactive. They'll take questions, but the civil servant who's moderating the meeting will only let through the questions that they want. So however often you ask, I mean, of course, I don't know how many of my colleagues
I don't think I've ever got a question through yet.
So, Minister, have you broken the rules in a carefully and non-specific way this week?
It is very much, but on the plus side, they do always thank us a lot. But it's a shame that
I get the feeling that the
is
civil
it, really.
servant
So
is
it's
prodding
awful
him,
fun.
saying, "God, say thank you." Tell him to say thank you.
But what kind of brings me on to next is talking about you guys are now governing. So how do you get the balance right between governing and campaigning? Because that is a whole other different thing. Or is good governing also campaigning? Joe, I mean, that's a thing, because from a backbench councillor, I often, when I'm out and about, I think good community politics is actually good campaigning politics. But is that the same when you're in charge?
I think so. And actually, one of the we're such typical Lib Dems. We always find ourselves, talking about the Tories and what a pain in the arse they are, aren't we? But yeah, I remember. I remember actually the leader of the Conservative group not long after we took control and said, "Well, you're in power now. Why are you still campaigning?" And I said, "Well, just because we're in power doesn't mean we stop campaigning on issues that are important to us. I probably don't. I don't campaign so much on issues around the district council, and what we're doing, but you campaign on issues that are important to your residents, whether that's a planning application or something much more strategic, a big local development that's going to be built. You don't stop campaigning. And I think actually in our roles as leaders, we're probably well placed to stand up for people whose voices aren't heard. And I certainly use my position as leader of the council to lobby and campaign on behalf of my local residents. We've had flooding over Christmas. Thames Water, our water provider, have been appalling. They've been really bad, and we're campaigning to try and get improvements from Thames Water. We're doing that, me as an individual, but also using the council apparatus to try and push that campaign forward. So yeah, I mean, I guess it depends what your definition of campaign is, but yeah, we're still campaigning, and I think that's absolutely part and parcel of what being a councillor and indeed a council leader is all about.
Absolutely, because we don't stop being ward councillors just because we're running the council. So there's always going to be local issues at a ward level that you'll be able to be fighting for and representing your residents on. But and those issues, of course, will influence perhaps some of those more higher level debates that you might be involved in as well. And so and that will also then maybe then we might be in conversations with ministers or with civil servants on how things could be changed. Sorry, I missed out a slightly important link there as well, which was talking to our local MPs as well. On the plus side, one of our MPs is Vera Hobhouse. The other MP is the one for North East Somerset.
Oh dear.
Who was at Kickstart when we were doing our piece in Latin?
I remember. One thing I think it's really important that we don't, you never stop campaigning. I mentioned I was first elected in the 1990s, and when the Tories were losing everything after the 92 general election, when Major was losing everything, and so we were running some very unlikely councils. And you'd never know that today, because it's like you have to do an archaeological dig to find traces of the Liberal Democrats in some of those places. They were running their councils very well, but they were spending so much time on doing it well that they weren't spending time telling the voters that they were doing it well. And so they just vanished. And it's a real tragedy to see that. So it's really important to keep campaigning. And as Dina says, you're a ward councillor as well. When you have multi-member wards, obviously it's great to have colleagues that you can share the load. And that's another thing I said, talking about getting a diverse range of councillors in. That if you've got one who does work full-time or part-time and another one who's retired or has more time on their hands for whatever reason, they can share the workload. And so it's really important that each ward team, or even pairs of wards that go together to make up our county divisions, for example, you work together as a team for your area. and it is difficult to take on those extra responsibilities. One of the things which I did in order to help run the council, given that nearly everybody was new, I mentioned earlier, we've got 4 directorates. So I was going to have 4 cabinet members, and each of them would have a deputy, so that we could bring new people in. And so also meant that those people who do have full-time jobs could still contribute to the leadership of the council. So my cabinet deputy for affordable housing, you notice the campaigning slogan there, my cabinet deputy for affordable housing is the customer service manager for Aviva Insurance, and she's one of the ones that's recently had a baby. So we've worked together as a team, and that's really important. And one of the other things I would say for the medium to larger size groups of how important internal communication is within the group. And early on, right at the start, we set up a sort of a buddy structure, so that there was a group of 4 councillors who were responsible for 5 backbenchers each, and so they kind of chat, and that became really important, obviously, once lockdown came in, and that we were talking to each other, saying, "How are you?" And it has been a struggle, and I it's not just council. Everybody has found adjusting to home life, homeschooling, and things like that really tough. But when you have these additional responsibilities of running a council, that has also added to the burden that some people are carrying, and so that's important. But yeah, the campaigning goes on, and it must go on, and we may only be just over 100 days away from the election. At least we must plan on the assumption that it's still going to be the 6th of May.
And I know, Stephen, you've got to go in a second, so I just want to thank you very quickly, because I know you've got another meeting at 5. But a very quick question I was going to end the podcast on. Stephen, you can go first, but I understand you do have to go. What's the one thing you did in opposition that you now think was completely daft now that you're a leader? I'm not. I'll let the other 2 think. I can't think. Right, fair enough. At the moment, I mean, I was always.
Didn't do anything daft as a leader of the opposition.
Oh right, there we go then.
I would say what I wasn't fully aware of was how much other stuff there was to do as leader of the council, and I think that's certainly been a big learning curve for me. It's all that other things that I simply had no knowledge of.
I think at the top of the intro, you mentioned about whether council leaders are more important than members of parliament, and I would say not more important per se, but certainly have more potential to change things. And I had a conversation with our friend and colleague, who I call the King of Bedford, Dave Hodgson. When I was regional chair and suggested that he might run for parliament, he said, "Why on earth would I want to do that? I have vastly more power as mayor of Bedford than I would as the MP." Our budget, including the housing benefit turnover, our turnover is £120 million. A controllable budget of £66 million. And we make a difference every day. We've signed, we've almost got our budget ready. It's just coming to cabinet in 10 days time for next year. And even that, despite the problems that we're facing, will have some good bits in it about investing in the environment and affordable housing, as well as having to take some really difficult decisions about where we're going to make savings to keep going. I mean, this is the best job I have ever done and ever probably will do. I do like my job, and that's why it's a bit easier to get up in the morning. And when you're surrounded by all the horrible things that are going on, and it could be very easy to get depressed, I know that I'm working for the 176,000 residents of my district, and a lot of them contact me. I'm very available on social media, so a lot of them contact me directly. Some of them are a little distressed that I'm not quite as available as I was when I was in opposition, and I do point out that I am quite busy. I'm on the county council as well, which is what I've got to go to in a moment. But I would say to anybody watching this who's thinking about getting involved in local government is really important. Someone said to me many years ago, I think it might have been Graham Tope, who's done every job you can in politics, or MP, peer, London Assembly. People become councillors to do something important. People become MPs to be someone important. And that has always stuck in my mind. I'm very proud of the group that I lead and of local government as a collective family, actually, of the difference we make every day to people's lives.
Wonderful, thank you. Dina, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, I would like to also echo what Stephen has said, particularly about being proud of my group. I am proud of my group. We are a collection of diverse people with different experiences and a wealth of knowledge in a range of different areas, and that has, I think, been helpful. I mean, it provides challenge, and I think it is greatly refreshing as well to have a group where 2/3 of it are made up of new councillors, and often people who are new to politics as well. And I think that has been that has been to the benefit of us as an administration, and also to the residents that each of those councillors represents. I particularly like the line that you had about the relative importance of councillors and MPs, Stephen, but I'm not going to repeat that. But what I would also say is that people do get into local politics to change things, to make things better. And I would just say that, which is fantastic, but you won't be able to change it the week that you become a councillor. Often things in local government take much longer than you expect.
Yeah, so in answer to your question, what did I do or say in opposition, which has come back to bite me? Well, being in opposition is good because you can say what you like, basically, and I certainly said what I like. And parking charges were a big issue for many years. Less so in the run up to local elections, but they were, and I made a big thing. And then, of course, I got into power and I had to put them up because of the financial situation. So that was really difficult. But yes, opposition is good because you can say what you like. But I'm sure Dina and Stephen would agree, there is nothing like being in administration, because you can do things, you can affect people's lives, and you're genuinely putting our liberal values into practice, which is great. I think just to sort of end on, we've got a huge set of local elections, probably in May, but certainly this year. We think it is so important that we do well in that. We saw the bounce we got after May 2019 when suddenly we were relevant, and it gave us a springboard to do well in the European elections. We have to do that again. A good set of local elections will do 1,000 times more than a press release from HQ will. Believe me. If we are to get taken seriously again nationally, we have to do well in these local elections, in the county council elections, in Scotland, in Wales, and in the mayoral elections. It is so important. I cannot understate how important those elections are. We'll keep doing the good work that we're doing at our councils, and we'll have lots of good examples and examples of best practice that we can share with campaigners. Talk to us, and hopefully we can get an absolutely tremendous result in the local elections this year, and that will put us on track to get MPs.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect example, because I was talking to a local party here in Lancashire that has no councillors at all, and some of their members were waiting for HQ to somehow save them. And that isn't going to happen. We have to be the change we want to see. We have to be the ones and that's whether you are. I'm very lucky. I have Labour facing on my district and Tory facing on my county, so I can punch all sorts of ways. But whoever you are, there will be councillors and councils that are taking people for granted, lazy councils, and so there is. Even if you are on your own in a black hole, there are opportunities for you to go out and make a difference, campaign for improve someone's lives. That's it. And like I said, I've been a councillor now for 10 years, and and I just repeat what Stephen said. It is such a privilege to do. I mean, I've not been in any sort of position of power. I've been a backbencher this entire time, but the thrill I get from helping my community, you can't replicate it. Nothing else I've done can replicate it. So, I mean, on behalf of myself and the LibDem Podcast, I just want to thank all three of you for being on this podcast. It has been really, really enjoyable. Open invitation for you guys to come back and come and speak to us again, because I think there's so many questions we could ask you, because we sometimes forget how important LibDems are in this group. You know, you see the circus in Westminster and realise just how important a cog we are in so many areas of this country. So thank you so much for your time. To anyone watching and listening, you can follow these guys on Twitter. I will link them in the show notes for you, so you can come and give them all the praise. Ask Stephen questions. You've heard it from him himself. He's very willing to answer as many questions as you can possibly give him. So do go follow these guys. Thank you so much for watching. You can follow everything to do with the LibDem Podcast at LibDem Pod. My name is John Potter. We'll have another episode very soon, and thank you very much for watching.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.